I found a man's watch in my bedroom drawer. My wife was downstairs, making me breakfast when I found it. I found a man's watch in my bedroom drawer on a Saturday morning, and my wife was downstairs making me breakfast when I found it. Not in a bag. Not somewhere you could explain away as a gift she forgot to give someone or something that got mixed up at the gym. In my drawer. The one on my side of the bed. Which means whoever it belonged to had been comfortable enough in my bedroom to put something down and leave without it, and my wife had let that happen and then watched me open that drawer and stood there while I held it up and told me she had never seen it before in her life. I turned it over in my hands for a second. Nice watch. Silver. Heavier than it looked. Initials scratched on the back. Not mine. I set it on top of the dresser. I went downstairs. I ate the breakfast she made, and I didn't say a single word about it. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why didn't you put it down on the table right there? Why didn't you hold it up in the kitchen and ask her whose initials those were? And I've thought about that moment 1,000 times since. But something happened when I found that watch that I can't fully explain, except to say that when the thing you've been half afraid of for months finally becomes real, your body doesn't always do what you think it will. Mine went cold, quiet, like a door closing somewhere deep inside me. And a voice that surprised me said, not yet. By the time I finished eating, I had made a decision. I was not going to say anything, not until I knew everything. Because if I confronted her right there, she would control what happened next. She would cry or explain or turn it around on me, and I would either believe her or I wouldn't, and the whole thing would play out on her terms. And I already knew I could not let that happen. We had been married for 8 years, together for 10. We met at a mutual friend's wedding in Charleston when I was 29 and she was 27, and she was the only person at the reception who wasn't dancing, and I went and stood next to her and we talked for 4 hours straight and missed the entire reception, and I drove home that night thinking I just met the person I'm going to marry. I was right about that. I just wasn't right about everything else. I went back through the last year in my head. Slowly. Carefully. The late gym sessions that started happening 3 nights a week when she had never been a gym person. The work conference in April she came back from 2 days early but didn't come home until late that night and said she just needed to decompress. The way her phone had developed a password sometime around February that it never had before. The way she had started laughing differently at things. Lighter. Like something in her had loosened up. I had noticed it and thought she seemed happy and felt good about that. I understood now what that lightness was. Some people glow when they are lying. That is the cruelest thing about it. I had been collecting these things in the back of my mind without letting myself look at them. The watch forced me to look. The following weekend I told her I was going fishing with my brother up north. 2 nights. I had done it every year for a decade. She kissed me at the door and said, "Be careful," and waved from the porch. I drove to my brother's place. He opened the door and looked at my face and didn't ask any questions. Just stepped aside and let me in. I sat at his kitchen table and went through everything. The watch, the gym, the conference, the phone. The way she had been glowing for months and I had mistaken it for happiness. My brother is not someone who fills silence, and that night he just let me talk, and when I was done he leaned back in his chair and said, "What do you want to do?" Not "Are you sure?" Not "Maybe there's an explanation," just "What do you want to do?" He has been my brother for 34 years and that was exactly the right thing to say. That night at 11, he drove past our house while I sat in his kitchen. There was a truck parked in our driveway that wasn't mine. He didn't say anything, he just sent me the photo. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put my phone face down on the table and stared at the wall and thought about 8 years of a life I had built around a person I was no longer sure I actually knew. I came home Sunday afternoon as planned. She was warm when I walked in, asked about the fishing, whether I caught anything, made coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table and looked me directly in the eye the entire time, and I thought this woman is remarkable at this. I mean that in the worst possible way. I spent the following 2 weeks moving quietly. I found an attorney on a Thursday and told my office I had a personal errand. He was a direct man who had clearly seen everything, and he walked me through exactly where I stood and what my options were without any unnecessary commentary. I left his office feeling something I didn't expect to feel. Ready. I documented everything I needed to document, made the moves I was legally entitled to make, did all of it while living completely normally, while sitting across from her at dinner, while watching television next to her at night, while being the husband she thought she still had completely fooled. That was the part that cost me the most, not the anger. I could have handled anger. It was the performance. Smiling at someone who is dismantling your life without knowing you can already see exactly what they're doing. Then I set up the ending. I called her father. His name is Gerald, and from the very beginning of my marriage he treated me like I belonged in his family without question or condition. He is the kind of man who shows up, who means what he says, who I genuinely respected more than almost anyone I knew. Calling him was the hardest phone call I have ever made in my life. I told him I needed him at the house for dinner on Saturday, that it was important, that I needed him to trust me and come. Silence for a moment. Then he said, "I'll be there at 6:30. I spent all day Saturday cooking, her favorite meal, the one I made for her birthday every year without fail. I set the table with the good dishes, lit candles. She came into the kitchen mid-afternoon and looked at everything and looked at me with this expression I can only describe as guilty tenderness and said, "What is all this?" I said I just wanted to do something nice. She hugged me from behind while I was standing at the stove, and I stood completely still inside that hug and looked at the wall in front of me and thought about the truck in the driveway. Gerald arrived at 6:30 with a bottle of wine and a firm handshake, and we all sat down together, and for the first part of dinner it was almost normal. He asked about work. She talked about her sister. I kept things moving. The food was good. I had made absolutely sure the food was good. Then I excused myself from the table. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I came back with 2 things. The watch and a folder. I set them both in the center of the table. She saw the watch first. The color left her face so fast it was like watching a light switch off. Gerald looked at the watch, then he looked at me, then he looked at his daughter. I sat down. I said her name. I said open the folder. Inside was a printed location history. 22 dates over 6 months. The same address repeated over and over. An apartment 8 minutes from our house. Pulled from the location sharing on our phone plan that she had forgotten we both had access to through the carrier account. Behind the location history were 2 photographs. My brother had taken them both the Sunday night I was supposedly fishing. The truck in the driveway was registered to a name that a quick search had connected to a face. A man. The second photograph was through the living room window. She was not alone. Behind the photographs was a printed phone record. Not the content of the messages. Just the number. The frequency. Every day for 6 months. Sometimes multiple times a day. Gerald put down his wine glass very carefully. He did not look at her. She started talking, fast and desperate and falling over itself. It wasn't what it looked like. It had gotten out of hand. She didn't know how to stop it. She loved me. She had always loved me. She was so sorry. She would do anything. Please. She was so sorry. I watched her talk. I watched Gerald's face while she talked. He was staring at the location printout and his jaw was tight and he looked like a man who was holding something enormous completely still by force of will alone. I held up my hand. I said the paperwork is already with the attorney. You have 30 days. She turned to her father. He still didn't look at her. She said, Dad. He closed his eyes for a second. Then he said her name in a voice I had never heard from him before. Low and flat and completely devastated. She turned back to me and she was crying now and her hands were shaking and she said, please don't do this. Please. I will spend the rest of my life making this right. We can fix this. Please just let me fix this. And I want to be honest with you because I think honesty is the only point of telling any of this. There was a moment, maybe 5 seconds, where I looked at her across the good dishes and the candles and the meal I had cooked all day and I saw the woman from the wedding in Charleston who stood against the wall while everyone danced and talked to me for 4 hours like I was the only person in the room. 5 seconds. Then I stood up. I picked up my plate. I walked to the living room. I sat down on the couch and turned on the television. And I listened to her cry at the dinner table with her father in the next room while the last 8 years finished collapsing. Gerald found me in the living room before he left. He sat down next to me on the couch and for a while neither of us said anything. Then he said, I have no excuse for her. I want you to know that. What she did to you has no excuse and I am not going to sit here and make one. I nodded. He said, you are a good man. You were a good husband. And I am sorry that this is what she did with that. He shook my hand. Held it for a long moment. Then he got up and walked out of my house for what we both knew was probably the last time. He texts me every few months, just checking in, asking how I'm doing. She has never contacted me, not once. I have the house, the dog, the good dishes still on the table because I haven't put them away yet. And the watch. It's still on the dresser where I left it that Saturday morning. I don't know why I haven't thrown it away. Maybe because it was the thing that told me the truth when nobody else would. And sometimes late at night when the house is quiet, I still think about those 5 seconds at the dinner table. Whether I should have given her a chance to explain. Whether there was a version of this where I said something that Saturday morning in the bedroom instead of going downstairs and eating the breakfast she made me and saying nothing. Whether knowing everything before I said anything made it better or just made it longer. I genuinely don't know. But I want to ask you something before I go. Because I've been sitting with this for a long time and I still don't have the answer. If you opened a drawer in your own bedroom and found something that didn't belong there, would you have gone downstairs and said nothing? And spent 2 weeks building a case? Or would you have walked into that kitchen right then and there and put it on the table between you? Because sometimes I think the way I handled it was the strongest I have ever been. And sometimes I think I sat on the truth for 2 weeks because some part of me was not ready to lose her yet. And I'm still not sure which one of those things is true. Are you?